So I want to begin by expressing my gratitude and huge appreciation for Jeanette. Where are you? She began among us as Bishop's Ministry Officer and then became Archdeacon of Suffolk. And we'll have opportunities to thank Jeanette before she actually retires, but this will be her last Diocesan Synod. So I want us to say how much, Jeanette, you are valued and appreciated for your pastoral care and diligence in your responsibility for clergy, laity and parishes across your archdeaconry, and you will be hugely missed. In the same breath, I want to welcome, where is he? Rich Henderson, who will take up the role of Archdeacon of Suffolk in May, and I'm excited too to be welcoming him into the staff team. You can clap. And Jeanette, I'd just like you to pop up here for a moment.
Just having a slurp of coffee.
Just say it's all right.
Martin knows.
Jeanette, just a little thank you for you, and just appreciation for all you are and all you do. Thank you. Let me continue on a personal note about me that has implications for us as a diocese. You'll probably be aware that bishops in the Church of England have to retire by their 70th birthday. And you may also be aware that I reached that milestone on May the 29th, remember that, May the 29th, 2024, so in just over a year's time. What most of you won't know is that last July, Archbishops Justin and Stephen encouraged me to think about staying a little bit longer. Not least because the national work that I've done for them, really organising the operations of the national church institutions, has taken me away from the diocese so much. I received a letter on Wednesday this week from Archbishop Justin granting me an extension until the summer of 2025. Imagine there's a certain amount of debate at home. So I hope that for some of you at least, that's a cause for a measure of relief, not least in terms of providing some stability. I mean, the issue isn't how good or bad the bishop is. It's the upheaval of changing bishops is a major upheaval, and those of you who've been through it will recognise that and recognise what happens when you have quite a long hiatus. And at the moment, there's a huge turnover, both among deans and among bishops, and so it's just slowing the process down even more. I personally am thrilled and blessed that I am able to serve you for a little longer in this amazing diocese and county. I wasn't expecting that. So in the light of what I have just said, I want to now outline to you what I see as my priorities for the next couple of years. These aren't new priorities, but I just thought this is a helpful point to just say this is what I feel I need to be engaged with. I present this with a clear recognition that we've been through the most extraordinary and devastating upheaval of the pandemic, which has disrupted the trajectory we were on and pushed us to discover new ways to live our discipleship and our ministries. And above all, through the anguish and constraints of that period of the pandemic, I believe, on the basis of what I see and what people have said to me across the diocese, it has turned us more outwards, which is where we should always be, serving, loving, caring for, praying for, and with, sharing faith with our whole communities. I've said on other occasions that my aspiration is that we could stop anyone in any street across the diocese, in any community, and ask them what they think of the church, and that they would have an answer, hopefully positive, but they would have an answer. They would know something about the church. And the important thing will be that the church and what we are about and the God we serve would be known about, if not yet personally known by everyone. That's my ambition. Now, our overarching aim in the diocese is the growth and renewal of the church in worship, witness and service. And the umbrella of that is what we've called for many years now, growing in God. And it was my stated intent at the very beginning that I wasn't going to change that. That doesn't help things to change that. We live within that, and we need to stay focused on that. Soon after I arrived, we went through, some of you may remember this, an exercise that developed some specific steps we needed to address to support the growing in God process. And in the introduction to those plans that came to this Synod in June 2016, I said this: much of this is not new, but represents the drawing together of proposals and plans produced in the diocese over the last few years. The core of it is growing in God, which has been taken on board by many parishes and beneficiaries across the diocese and has a momentum we want to sustain. You could say that growing in God represents the what, and what we proposed then in 2016 represents the how. In that list of hows, there were four main headings: faith and discipleship, vocation and ministry, relationships and structures, and finance and buildings. And those four headings have provided a direction of travel in terms of activity for the past 7 years, and can do so for at least the next 2. I have within that 4 personal priorities for over the next 2 years, which have actually been my priorities for some time, but it's just, I think it's just helpful to articulate them. In the sense that I want to get things to a point where they can carry on. My fear is that you sort of start something, you get going, and then you leave and it all falls apart. So it's getting things bedded in so that they don't evaporate. And it's not just up to me, obviously this is about working together, but it's what you to know where I'm putting some of my energies. None of them will be a surprise, and I want you to hold me to account for these. So I'm going to go through those 4 headings, which don't necessarily correspond to the 4 priorities, but I'll name them as I go through. In the faith and discipleship, we've engaged in all sorts, including the activities generated through Rhiannon King and Inspiring Ipswich and Sally Gaines and Lightwave, but also through the day-to-day learning and growing in congregations across the diocese, led and animated by our clergy and lay ministers. Central to that is worship, and the heart of our growth and formation in faith is our worship. Quality, regularity, accessibility of worship is paramount. And you may remember about 6 years ago, 2016, 7 years ago, we started the Enhancing Worship course that has supported those who lead worship in developing their own gifts and skills and talents for that ever since. Under this heading, faith and worship, my first priority, my 4 that I want to ensure is that the ensure is on track and going somewhere, is our work with and for young people. It's a priority for many of us, and we have a diocesan plan for this. But I'm very keen to see real progress in this area. I'm concerned not just to support young people who are engaged with our churches, but to be a credible witness for those who are way outside the church's ambit. So I'm devoting a good deal of time, both for the well-being of young people in our county and for the witness to and with young people in or on the edges of the life of our churches. It's vital for them that we can show and share Christ's love in whatever ways we can to connect with youngsters today. This includes engagement with schools, work through growing faith, as well as engaging with youngsters out of school. I want to just thank the Dean and his team for the ways in which they have taken this priority on board at the Cathedral, and seeing the work they have done there is transformative. The second heading of those four was vocation and ministry, and we declared then, and I quote, "We will develop patterns of ordained and lay ministry that are life-giving and sustainable. We will build up the numbers of those in lay and ordained ministries to provide resilient and creative ministry across the diocese. We will develop a culture and practice of training, including discipleship, ministerial and continuing development that is integrated and flexible." A very ambitious statement. Now, such ambitions aren't delivered overnight, but we can probably all see that a huge amount has been accomplished in the past 7 years, and for which I rejoice. We undertook a ministry employment review, wonderfully supported by Jeanette, who then, of course, became Archdeacon of Synod. That led to a plan that had 3 key components. First, we would not cut stipendiary clergy posts, if at all possible, though clergy may be deployed in some ways slightly differently to respond to need. Secondly, we would increase the number of self-supporting ordained and lay ministers. And thirdly, we would develop a pattern, where appropriate, of ministry teams with local ministers, lay or ordained, each serving a local church and community. You will know that the auxiliary ordination pathway has had a huge impact in realising the increase in self-supporting clergy and enabling people who would not have sought to discern a vocation to ordain ministry through the whole national programme to do so, and to have that vocation recognised and now to be exercising it in wonderful ways. Some of you are here. I believe we have ordained nearly 50 people through this programme. We've even seen a handful convert to stipendiary ministry and flourish in that call. I pray for a significant increase in auxiliary ordination pathway candidates and in stipendiary and self-supporting national candidates for ordained ministry. In the same period, we have, under Dave Gardner's leadership, seen a flowering of lay ministries, pioneers, family and children's workers, evangelists, chaplains, and so on. With good training and support, these have been a great addition to many benefices across the diocese, complementing the backbone of lay ministry provided by our lay elders and our readers. And now again, steered by Dave, we have a pioneering continuing development programme for incumbents, funded by the Church Commissioners, which has just started. The maintaining of our stipendiary clergy numbers is a challenge of 2 sorts: paying for them and then funding them. I'll say a bit more about paying in a moment. Finding them has been challenging in the last year, and that's been a national challenge, not peculiar to us, though I am hearing from colleagues that things are beginning to pick up. Out of all this, my second aim for the next 2 years, the first was about young people, is to support, encourage and care for our ordained and lay ministers, particularly but not only, by ensuring development opportunities such as the one I've referred to, and that those are as available as possible to as many as possible, ordained and lay. The third area of the 2016 plan we call relationships and structures, and I'm not going to dwell on it, largely because much has happened in this area simply by people learning to work together and to learn from one another. The challenges come from people, clergy and laity who want to cling on to their isolation, that's the challenge, which is of course a recipe for demise. But what I see is an increasing desire to work together, to learn and build together, with a host of different gatherings and configurations of networks and groupings, and I would encourage that to develop even more. The fourth area in that plan was resources and buildings, and this contains my other two aims. At the end of 2019, we balanced the books for the first time in living memory. Then the pandemic hit. So my third aim that I've given myself to over the next 2 years is working closely with Edward Creasy, our wonderful chair at the DBF, as well as with many others, to get us into a secure financial footing for the future. That does mean improving our giving and continuing to work on that. It means extending the reach of those who give, meaning more people from a wider field. It means creative and innovative developments of new sources of funding and income generation. People are immensely generous and always have been, but our times are very challenging, and we need to find ways to increase both existing income streams and develop new ones. My fourth aim within that is to move our church buildings onto a more secure and sustainable future. Great work has been done before the pandemic, including developing a scheme that would start to mitigate insurance and maintenance costs, a scheme which other dioceses are now adopting, but we've been held back by the pandemic and by personnel changes. I'm grateful to David Jenkins for leading our engagement on this, including supporting those exploring complementary uses for church buildings. I'm absolutely committed to not leaving the challenge of church buildings to my successor. We are being helped by financial and other resources from the Church Commissioners funds that are being put into both achieving net zero carbon for 2030 and supporting our church buildings to be sustainable buildings for mission. So 4 aims for 2 years: developing our engagement, support of and witness to young people, promoting the development and support of our lay and ordained ministers, securing the financial base of the diocese, ensuring our church buildings are on track to be sustainable, missionary and net zero. Now those of you who know me well will know that is not all I'll do. But those are the 4 things in my diocesan role I want to be held to account for. And on every one, we will all need to work together. And that, for me, is what makes this such a blessed place. To be serving with people who want to care and support one another and work together to show and share Christ's love for the people